Hello there everyone, it's Alex here from RPG Site, and last week I got to go and play Mass Effect Andromeda, which is pretty exciting. This is a game, well, a bit of background, I absolutely love the Mass Effect series in general. I got full achievements on all of the original trilogy, yes, even the third one. I gave the second game a 10 on RPG Site in our review, and I really like this series, but I've been really nervous about Andromeda because EA has elected, for one reason or another, to just not show very much of the game. So it was pretty exciting to go and get to play a few hours. So we started out, they literally just threw us in on high-end PCs. We could play keyboard and mouse or a Xbox One controller, either. And yeah, they threw us in at the very start of the game. They let us play the first mission, which we can talk to you about in detail, apart from some spoiler stuff, and we'll get this out of the way at the top. I'm not going to talk about any major story spoilers here, any big story beats. I might talk about what characters are around, things like that, but I'm not going to tell you, what is actually going on. So we played the opening of the game, played the full opening mission, which is a pretty typical standard Mass Effect first mission, but it is a longer mission than your Eden Prime or Cerberus Base or Earth missions from the previous games. And then we got to load up a save file much further in the game. I don't know how many hours, but a significant number of missions in the game where there were, at that point we had the ship and a number of different squad mates and all that sort of stuff, and therefore got to play around with weapons and character progression and all the RPG stuff, plus got to drive the Nomad. So I'm just going to run down a few things, try and keep this video relatively short, talk about a few things that I want to get out of the way to reassure people. So, combat feels pretty damn good. So one of the key things here is they have sort of streamlined it a bit. It's more like Mass Effect 3 multiplayer. There's no powers wheel or anything like that. It is more, you have less powers at once available to you, but the key difference is that you can switch between profiles on the fly. Profiles are interesting too, so that brings me on to character progression, and we'll come back to some other aspects of combat. But all skills are available to you from the start. There are some skills you might need other skills in order to get to, but the point is you're not making a choice at the start like, I want to be a soldier or I want to be an adept, and that determines what skills you have access to. You can have access to everything from the moment you press go. The flip side of that is, the classes you unlock are actually determined by the things that you unlock. So if you unlock a lot of weapon-based abilities, it's going to eventually say, congratulations, you have unlocked the soldier profile. And the profiles function the same way as classes did previously, in that they offer you bonuses, such as, you've got an assault rifle damage bonus or whatever for soldier, or, cooldown reduction times for biotics. And so you get access to that based on what you've actually purchased. Now, the interesting thing here is that means you can unlock multiple profiles, and that means you can actually, on the fly, whenever you like, switch between profiles. So that means if you are approaching from a distance and you're taking out your sniper rifle, you could switch to the infiltrator profile, get those sniper rifle bonuses, and then when you go in close to finish off, switch to sentinel or something like that, something where you're going to be better, more powerful, more deadly up close. I think that's really interesting. I think it's really smart. I think it will provide some interesting RPG mechanics. 3-4 hours, which is what we got to play, is not really enough to get a true idea of how the RPG systems of the game are going to play out. But I liked it. I really, really did. I like the idea. I spent quite a bit of time leafing through the menus. Liked it. What other notes can I give? I guess just want to note the codex is back and is as enormous as ever. I want to say there was a really cool moment that I just have to describe where in the first mission you get to spend some time with, if you don't know much of the story of this game, it's twins, and you will pick one of the twins, which is how you get to choose your gender, and your father is actually a major character in the game, I guess, and in the intro you actually fight alongside him for a while, and one of the coolest things in the world is he's using a lot of the classic Shepard powers because he's an N7, and for the first time, I was like, oh my god, this must be what it must have looked like to be one of Shepard's squad mates and fight alongside him, because he was such a badass. He was tearing through everything. So that was a really cool moment. To go back to combat a little bit, one major change is that you no longer snap in and out of cover. Anything that you get near to that is viable for cover, you will just hunker down next to, and then it's cover. That's it. Simple as that. There's no messing about. You just hunker down naturally as you get close. I actually thought this was a little bit janky, if I'm honest with you, but it might be something I'll get used to. So I am, hopefully, because I just struggled to know when I was in cover, when I was safe. But I guess that's something that will come with the language of the game as you get more practice. Squad mates, they seem cool. They seem like an interesting bunch. Again, 2 hours is not enough to, especially because an hour and a half of our time was spent on the intro, where you don't really, it's more focused on introducing you to the world. So really with the squad mates, we only had a couple of hours, and that's not really enough to really get to know them. But they seem interesting, and I had an interesting conversation with the Solarian pilot of the Tempest Jornu's ship. Seems like he'll be a decent replacement for Joker. So that's fun. What else can we talk about? I guess I do want to talk about the visuals. So Frostbite is a great engine. I think we all know that from Battlefield 1. Mass Effect Andromeda is a really nice looking game, especially from when you take in the big picture, when you take in a vista, a planet. These environments are enormous, by the way. The Bioware guys at the event were telling us that the smallest individual zone in Mass Effect Andromeda is still bigger than Dragon Age Inquisition. Now, there's important context here, which is that, of course, in Mass Effect Andromeda you have a vehicle, the Nomad, which I'll talk about in a minute, and so you're driving really fast across terrain, far faster than a horse would ever take you in Dragon Age. So of course the terrain is a lot bigger, but what that leads to is there's some beautiful vistas, and they've really done some good work with Frostbite. And they also, one of the things they explained to us is they're very keen for every planet to sort of have that thing where in one sentence you and I could be talking about the game, and if I said, oh, the planet with the floating rocks, you would go, oh yeah. So there's that. And also, it is worth pointing out, in the Pantheon, they wouldn't say where exactly it fit, but obviously Mass Effect 2 and 3 tended to have a lot of environments, but they were all smaller zones. Mass Effect 1 and 2, 1 had the large environments, but really there were only there was the Citadel and 4 story planets, and then, a few side things and Eden Prime and things like that. So this is going to, they wouldn't be drawn on how much content, but they were basically saying the zones they've built are more like Mass Effect 1, so you're not going to be visiting loads of planets. They've decided on, in their words, quality over quantity. They basically said, it will be more than we're not talking about 2 or 3 planets, but it is going to be smaller but more depth to everything you experience. And I definitely got that impression off the 2 planets that I got to see. So yeah, and visually, they're all gorgeous, and those vistas and stuff are amazing. The flip side of that is, some of that Mass Effect Bioware jank still remains. The facial animations, they're a little bit iffy, and stuff like that. There's a little bit of that. You can tell they had to make a lot of cutscenes, and that requires them to cut corners. This certainly isn't going to look like, an Uncharted or something like that in terms of how the characters move, or even, to use another Frostbite example, even look as good as the story sequences in Battlefield 1, which had incredible faces, but the difference is they only had to animate, an hour and a half of animation for faces, whereas this presumably has a hell of a lot more than that. So you take that as it comes. It is what it is, right? Mentioned I was going to talk about the Nomad, so it's fun. I was one of the people who was a bit of an apologist for the Mako, even though it's kind of crappy. I always loved it, and I think the Nomad is a great continuation of the Mako. It's got 2 modes. It's got rear wheel drive, which is fast and you can boost and you can drive really quickly. So if you're on flat-ish terrain, you want to switch to that and you can get around quickly. But then if you're clambering up mountains in that very Mako fashion, then you can switch to all-wheel drive and gain more control and more traction. And I thought that was a really cool touch, actually. And it's got the boost and stuff like that. No guns. I'm sure you know this from the preview coverage before, but no guns on it. But this new cover system means that you can hop out and use it as cover, because it is one of those dynamic objects that when you get close to it, your version of Ryder will just hunker down. So yeah, it's the last thing I really want to talk about is the tone. And the thing that I find interesting is tonally this feels a lot more like the original Mass Effect. It feels a lot like the first Mass Effect game. It's a Strangers in a Strange Land story, that's very much clear. It has some really good moments in terms of playing up the fact that you don't know anything about this new universe you're in. And it's exciting. I know people have said a lot, where are all the new aliens? This sucks, why are we with Krogan and Asari again? But, you know, there are races who are missing, for one, so... And I'm sure there'll be complaints. You know, I'm pretty sure there aren't going to be any Quarians in this game, and I'm sure people will then go, "Where are the Quarians? This sucks." But I did get the impression, you know, I was walking through towns, and there were new aliens and new species to interact with, as well as the old ones. Everyone was sort of mixed in together, and it feels like a good expansion of the universe in that way. And I get the impression the universe is going to expand quite significantly throughout the course of this game, and I don't know, I'm really hopeful about that side of the game. There's something about the tone that really, in that first hour or so, where it really felt different to the sort of rah-rah, war, save the world. Because you are still, you know, the stakes are still high in that you are with the only humans in this galaxy. And your job as Pathfinder is to find them a new home, and if you don't, then everybody's going to die out in space when the food and the oxygen and everything else runs out. So the stakes are high, but it's not save the universe high, and at least not in what I played. And I think that becomes a more intimate story. I mean, much the same way that, you know, Mass Effect 1 was sort of a conspiracy story with this big high-stakes universe-saving plot wrapped up in it. This feels a bit more like that, where it's an individual, more unique personal story, I guess, that larger things are wrapped up in. At least that's how it feels. But again, the key thing with this is 3 hours, 4 hours is not enough to judge. So yeah, I'm interested. Well, I was interested before, but the difference is I was fairly worried before. Now I'm more like, oh, okay, this is what it is. This is definitely still Mass Effect, but it does seem to have a voice of its own. The combat feels good. The RPG systems are intriguing, but I'm not yet 100% convinced, and that's something we will be focusing extremely hard on in our review of the game and seeing how that pans out. So looking forward to seeing that. But the openness does seem to add, you know, the size of these zones and how many optional things there appear to be to do does seem to add a lot to the RPG side of things. And yeah, I can't wait to see how the characters turn out. You know, that's something by which this game might possibly live or die. So I'm extremely excited to see a little bit of that. So, yes, that's Mass Effect Andromeda. It is out in about a month, 5 weeks now. Crikey, it's close. So, yeah, or is it actually, it's exactly a month more or less, I think. Not 5 weeks. Oh, whatever. I will put the date in the description because I've forgotten it. But, yeah, it's out really soon is the point. It's out at the end of March, and we will have a full review and more videos and probably a special edition of our Tetracast, the podcast, where we talk about the game in detail once we've actually played it in full. So be sure to stick with us. We'll be covering other things this month. Nier Automata, Zelda. It's a big month. March is a big month. So, yeah, but I'm feeling pretty good about Mass Effect Andromeda. If you want more content on it, be sure to hit us up, rpgsite.net, at rpgsite on Twitter, facebook.com/rpgsite.net, and we'll see you pretty soon for more Mass Effect stuff. So until next time, everyone, see ya.